garsorna inogayel gashano allow namideyo amni iyo gonimo iyo isku filan allow nagu raaji
anutos na walalayalo aniska shifilkena kubne
inago ishilkan hagar la'aan ku howlan dalkenan Kenya oo aanu jecelnahay ilaalintiisa aan abid ku dadaalno
andisnoon u adeegna dalkeeno wajib weyena saaran ilaaye
ixtiraamkay Kenya mudan tahay aan siino umidowna xil ogo iskaashina samayno abidkeen aan ahano dad abaale.
Hello viewer, thank you for joining us. This is Faces of Kenyan Somalis with me, Eunice Deko. This morning we host Ahmed Muhumed, a former Wajir gubernatorial candidate and one of the most popular faces of Kenyan Somalis in the Republic of Kenya. Thank you very much, Ahmed, for speaking to us and for giving us the opportunity to speak to you.
Thanks, Eunice. Thanks. Welcome.
How has the year 2021 been for you?
2021 and probably 2020, not necessarily for me alone, as being generally a roller coaster, considering the ravaging COVID-19, which has really affected the economic bedrock of the country and of the globe. So generally, a roller coaster in terms of engagement socially, a lot of protocols, health protocols to be observed, and restrictions on what to do and what not to do. And of course, losing many loved ones and friends and acquaintances across, not only in Kenya, but across the globe. So generally, it has been a roller coaster, mixed feelings here and there. But we hope that in the years ahead, things will improve and it will be illuminating, inshallah.
Inshallah, I know I'm very sorry for the people you have lost and the loved ones you have lost over the period. And I think that is shared across the globe. I think almost every one of us has been in one way or the other affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. You went silent immediately after a case you filed in court was nullified at the last post, that is at the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya. I want you to tell me about the case. Actually, let's start from when did the idea of going to court start? Immediately after the elections.
It wasn't total silence per se, it was more of avoiding media glare, but because in any election there will be winners and losers, definitely you will give a chance to those who have won to implement their policies and mandate. To come to the question, when did it start? It started on the very material day of elections, the very thought that things were going out of script as per IEBC template, because things didn't go well on the very voting day, and my first press conference was on 9th of August 2017, where I expressed my views on the election not being held as per the dictates, going shambolic. But I didn't stop there. This was not just my own decision to make. I had to go back to the community. I went back to my political strongholds, so to speak, in Wajir South, where I took about 5 days of crisscrossing the expansive sub-county, constituency, asking people of their opinion, and also thanking them for the votes cast on in my favor. That took about 5 days. I also came back to Wajir. I had to have elders caucus, where I told them to decide what to do next. After that, because there was a committee, elections committee and elders committee, who also endorsed me going to court as an expression of dissatisfaction with how things went on the polling day. So that decision came Probably it took quite some time to decide. Right after elections, on the very material day, but the decision happened on 24th of August 2017.
So tell us about the process. You first went to the High Court, and mobilizing the legal procedures, and having lawyers to represent you. Tell us about that particular process, and what actually were you targeting? You said that there were irregularities in the election that you participated. What are some of the things that you knew crystal clear that okay, this is going to take us again to the ballot for a by-election?
It was a long journey. Suffices to say that there were a number of malpractices, both in terms of procedures and processes, and in terms of number padding, other things that didn't conform to regularities and regulations as per IBC dictates. And of course, a general feeling by the public and electorate that things didn't go well, and it was a pervasive feeling that it didn't go as per the necessary protocol. So we went to High Court along with my colleague then, fellow petitioner, former Governor Ahmed Abdullahi. I think we were successful with the High Court. We were equally successful at the Court of Appeal, but things took a nosedive and went south at the Supreme Court. It was a long journey, close to 2 years, and I think it suffices to say that we sought legal redress. It was of course our pathway to express your feelings. It didn't go as per our expectations, and I think it was a landmark ruling that shook the country to the core, in that it deviated a lot from expectations of legal practice. But I think that is that. Once that ended, of course, I had to pick up the pieces, pack up, and move on.
You petitioned the case together with the former Wajir Governor Ahmed Wajir. I'd like to know if he in any way influenced you politically during that period that you were working together.
No. This decision came. I took the decision to go to court before him, and he joined us a little later. And I came to know Ahmed on the 9th of August 2017. I didn't know him personally before that, so there was no say, so to speak. Of course, we were co-petitioners, and we went all the way to the Supreme Court. It was successful in two of the steps, but it didn't go well with the final step. What matters is this was not a personal vengeance against the current governor or anything. It was just a personal conviction, not just personal, but community conviction that things didn't go right. So when things don't go your way, you seek legal redress, and once things move in one way or another in your favor or against, then you move on. So we left the governor to attend to the people, our people, and implement his policies and his mandate to go well smoothly. So that's why probably we went a bit underground, away from the media glare, to give him also a chance to implement his policies.
We will come back to Wajir politics in a moment. I'd like to know where you stand in Kenya's politics at this particular time.
Okay, I'm a member of former PDR. PDR was a party that metamorphosed to UDA now, which is an affiliate party of Jubilee Coalition. Of course, a lot is happening now, and it's normal that during transition periods every 10 years, there's usual political jostling here and there to disrupt the status quo and come up with a new equilibrium. So we will wait and see how things shape and move on. But as of now, I'm a member of UDA, which is an affiliate party of Jubilee. The coalition still exists, though with a lot of tumultuous experiences of push and pull. And it is normal political jostling. Every transition period, it happens in two 2013. It's expected in 2022 as well. So we will, of course, COVID-19 has affected a lot of political activities, but certainly things will shape up as we proceed towards the end of the year.
You took much of your time during the last 4 years, you know, in the case you filed against the former Wajir governor. But I would like to know, your party was in coalition with President Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee Party, and you were the face of the party in, you know, the Northern Frontier District. That one is undeniable. I would like to know whether you were approached in any way over that period, or you didn't give, you know, yourself to join government, or you were very busy with your court case. It's something I'd like to know.
In my case, it was several years of campaign, both covert and overt, and almost 2 years of prolonged litigation. So by the time we came out of the whole process, there was more infighting than invitations in Jubilee or its affiliate parties. So there was no invitation per se, but there was the environment was not conducive for any invitation. It was more of infighting.
Yes.
Political jostling, push and pull, than a house which is in order. So in such a situations, of course, and considering time is limited, we just finished this in 2019, so we're out maybe 1.5 years. So you don't have time to really waste. So you move on, pick the pieces, dust up and move on, and make sure you prepare yourself for the next run.
So you're preparing yourself for the next election?
Sure.
So are you vying for governor again?
Subject to discussion and a lot of consultation.
Okay. So it's not something that you like to confirm at this moment?
For now, let's say the better.
I would like to know, are members of the Somali community in Kenya united? Will you say that they're united in any way? They are part of Kenya's 44 communities. Are they united in any way?
United is a amorphous term. They are united in more ways than one, but politically speaking, which is quite significant in this country. This is a democracy. It's not a military state. It's not a police state. It's not a kingdom. So what matters is the political presence and weight in the country. So in terms of politics and political space and footprint in the country, probably not. And that is our undoing in the country. Except occasional bubbles and flare-ups here and there, which fizzle out as fast as they crop up. There isn't much to speak of in terms of political union for Somalis in the country. We are quite suave and smart in jostling for spaces across every political formations in the country. But that sometimes splits you into many units that may not have any effect in any forum you are in. And in politics, if you are not on the table, you'll be on the menu. So you can't be on the table when your presence and footprint isn't felt. So as of today, probably not united politically speaking, but even every other sphere of life or walk of life, you're good to go.
Are we visible among Kenya's, 50 million population?
Our visibility is more in entrepreneurship. We have an exceptional business acumen as a community. We do much better in business than in politics. Our visibility in terms of politics is not so much stuck in the country. Of course, we have a good number of individuals here and there. We made it to the majority leader for quite a number of years, almost 8 years, which was significant showing and presence. We are yet to evaluate how much, or try to do some kind of postmortem. What was the positive effect of that in our in our presence and political presence in the country? But generally speaking, other than this ad hoc individual push and pull, individual pursuits here and there, I think there is no collective efforts as a community to ensure that our presence is felt. And unless we do that, we will always be somehow politically divided. Our presence may not be of that impactful, politically speaking. And we may continue having or speaking of the same thing year in, year out.
The Somali community is today the sixth largest community group in this republic, and if you look at the statistics of birth rates in our country, the Somali community our community is one of the fastest growing populations in Kenya. Can one of our own become president in the future?
That's a long shot, and it might take us a month of Sundays. But every long journey starts with one step. And presidency is not sought by one community in Kenya. It's a conglomeration of many communities that come together. Our politics, unfortunately, is more ethnic than it is probably in many parts of the continent of Africa. But I say every long journey starts with one step. And it's not just the numbers that take you to the State House. It's more of coalition building. It's more appealing to other communities. It's, of course, it totally depends on your political base and strongholds. But if you really want to, as a community, be the president, say in the next 20, 30 years to come, then we must start today. We must start today, not only working on our numbers, but also making our presence nationally felt, and also making sure that we have the necessary political muscle to pull other communities to our side. And the current system may not serve us best. The current system, which is presidential, may not serve us best. I think it would have worked better for us if the system was more parliamentary than presidential, considering in parliamentary systems it's parties that really work more than numbers and ethnic ethnic strength, numerical strength of your ethnicity or your community rather. So I will not necessarily rule it out, but as I said, it is a long shot. It will take some time, a month of Sundays, and it will also, that time can also be either shortened or lengthened by how we organize ourselves and get our ducks in a row and put our house in order to ensure that we fix our eye on the goal. So for now it might look a pie in the sky, but certainly there's nothing impossible in politics. It's all about how it's the art of the possible. It's called the art of the possible. Yeah, and it's up to you as a person. First, it starts with your conviction. You must bring yourself up to the thinking that, okay, I can be the president of this country. And of course, not just by conviction, but take the needful steps to make sure that you reach there. I am not a pessimist, but I'm sure there are many challenges ahead of reaching there, which need to be crossed.
Senator Yusuf Haji, may soul rest in peace, was a popular face of the Kenyan Somalis. He has served in almost all of Kenya's government. His family is somehow still in government. His senator was just recently elected and opposed. His son was elected unopposed as a member for the Garissa County senatorial position in the upper house. I would like to know what do you remember about him and whether he served, the spirit of the Kenyan Somalis, because there are faces of Somalis across the region. We have the Ethiopian Somalis, we have the southern Somali, we have Somaliland, we have Djibouti, and the face of the Kenyan Somalis. So as a leader of our community over the past 60 years, did he represent us?
Yes, he represents us very well. He has been an elder. He has been quite a unifying figure for all the Somalis across the region, not just in Kenya, but across the Horn of Africa. He participated quite significantly in the Ethiopian reconciliation process through and through. He has been an elder of resort for Kenyan politicians, and definitely also generally across the region. He was more of a person living larger than life in terms of his wealth of experience in governance and public bureaucracy. So he really served that position very well, and it is necessary that the Somali community in Kenya probably find a replacement for him among the crop of leaders who are there at the moment. They may not necessarily be people who are holding public offices, but we certainly need a fellow figure. We certainly need a figurehead as a community. And he has really served that position very well, as far as I know. He really did well.
So he has contributed immensely to the efforts of developing Kenyan Somalis. Thank you for that. Ahmed, I would also like to know whether we are treated equal to the rest of Kenya, and why do some people, especially from southern Somalia and people from the faces of other Somali identities, why do they have a feeling that we are treated as second-class citizens? And is this really true? As someone who was born in Kenya, you went to seek justice in the highest court of our republic, and people still believe that there's widespread rumors that we are not treated equal. Is it something that is there? Is it true? And what is your experience?
Okay. I mean, the worst form of limitation is psychological limitation, psychological subjugation, some kind of. And it is one thing to be facing a challenge, but a different thing to internalize the same and live with it. You don't expect your situation to be changed by these challenges we face today, which of course have, drastically reduced, significantly reduced over the years, have historical bearing. They have. You understand how we found ourselves in Kenya. It has historical bearing to it. But so many other communities in Kenya, up to and until I think 1906 or somewhere there, up to Naivasha was part of Uganda, I think. The coastal strip was part of Zanzibar, and many other parts of Kenya were not part of Kenya per se. But you will not hear them talking about marginalization or second-class citizen or this kind of a thing. Thoughts really carry the person. If you tell your child you're stupid, you're an nincompoop, you're a moron, you're this and that every day, then the likelihood of your child being stupid is high. Acquired stupidity through you. So these pervasive thoughts of us being treated as second class is misplaced, in my view. It is stale and sterile. We need to move away from that and change our fortunes. Even the Quran teaches us in Surah Al-Ra'd, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. You are supposed to change your destiny. God has given you the thinking faculty to change. And there is no person more Kenyan than you. Everyone found himself in this space called Kenya. Okay? So, there was marginalization. There was a lot of subjugation, a lot of mistreatments. Traces of the same are still there. Okay? They are still there. We don't rule them out. But it's up to us, really, to step up the game, to feel our presence, political presence, felt, to infiltrate the public service, to make sure that we are on the table of decision making. And we now have devolution, which is a blessing. So our fortunes must have changed. They ought to have changed. And we need to discard the thoughts and the sterile thinking that we are second class. There are, of course, history to this, and we can't, of course, rule that out. But I can't wrap my head over the constant, perennial, persistent thought of us feeling second class. We must up our game. We must put our house in order. We must get our ducks in a row and ensure that we take our fortunes into our own hands. Of course, legally speaking. There are certain lingering structural bottlenecks still in the public bureaucracy of Kenya affecting us, but I don't want us to be shackled in history, to live in the past. Okay? If you want to really change yourself, change your destiny, you must take the steps. You don't expect the current political luminaries, Ruto, Raila, Uhuru, whatever, to change your fortunes. Of course, they will not. Okay? But it's up to you to make your presence felt, politically speaking, economically speaking, and socially speaking. While I will not say there are these bottlenecks, they are still there, but I will want my Somali community to discard that mentality once and for all, completely.
That is in the past.
Yes. History, you cannot live in history. It's 60 years now. Okay? 60 years, too much time. 7 generations. We can't live in that history. So we need to discuss that, discard that, and open a new page, a new lease of life, and ensure that we take our destiny into our own hands, shaping us ourselves and the politics of the country, and being on the table instead of being the menu.
We have discussed how we feel we are treated by the rest of Kenya and even the Kenyan government. But I'd like to know what about how we treat ourselves? How will you describe the looting and corruption happening across the Somali region in Kenya?
Okay. It's an unfortunate bearing, it's an unfortunate situation. We ought to have been the paragon of virtue and monumental development in terms of impact devolution has made in our countries, in our counties. So to that extent, and considering that we profess the Islamic faith, we ought to have been the paragon of virtue, of models of devolution as for the country. Now we're speaking of other counties being mentioned like Makueni and others. I think the previous, probably, I don't know exactly, I may not have the statistics, but generally the alarm there's so much of negative publicity in terms of corruption in our counties. A lot of it is attributable to the lead. You see, in any leadership, it is the leader who sets the tone at the top. It's that tone that cascades down all the way to the sweeper in the office. If you are a leader who is always caught with his hands in the cookie jar, then you don't expect your juniors to do anything better, because they will do. So it is the tone you set at the top that really matters. Besides that, also, whatever the case, our politics is probably the most expensive per capita, and per capita costs. And this also contributes to the effect it will have on whoever becomes the leader eventually. Ours is also a convoluted collection of social constructs and conundrums, so to speak. There are many loose ends here and there in terms of our customs, in terms of our ethnic belongings and all this kind of a thing. But eventually, buck stops at the leader. It is the leader who sets the tone. It is the leader who is supposed to ensure that he doesn't pander to the deceit and deception and the shenanigans that the communities may come along with. It is the leader that ought to have some kind of participatory and a leadership that ensures that every community's well-being and priorities are set. But we are a convoluted collection, as I said, of several social constructs. These constructs require someone with a backbone of steel, but a heart of gold, to ensure that he doesn't pander to deceit and deception, but equally sets the tone right. And it requires that firmness, but equally ensuring that political waves do not sweep you away. You must remain afloat. So you must strike a balance between the politics at play, the priorities of the community, which is sometimes lopsided, and ensuring that the right thing is done, and you're able to say no where you ought to, and say yes where you are. So generally speaking, it's a collection of a lot of things, a lot of, as I said, problems, but it is usually, and it ought to be the leader who sets the tone. And you must stick by that tone and make sure that it's that tone that cascades down to the community. So, as I said, we ought to be the paragon of virtue in the country. If not for anything else, it is for the reason that we profess Islamic faith. So corruption in the community, in Islam, it's highly prohibited. And I'm sure if the leader in his right convictions, with the right set of tone, can really make tremendous changes in the country and the people. Besides, we have been speaking a lot about marginalization being treated second for a long time. For a long time. We have now the opportunity to change. We have now the opportunity to make sure that we discard those mentalities. We are now on a self-rule. And yes, with huge resources at our disposal. So this is why I say this mentality of saying second class, being marginalized and all that is sterile still. We need to change. We have the resources now at our disposal. So why don't we change? Why do we talk of the same thing that we were talking of in 1963? No. So boils down to the leader eventually. Yeah.
So if something wrong is happening, then the person who should take responsibility is the leader of that government. So does that mean that the appetite for stealing and looting public money that is quite very visible now, the person at the center is the leader of that particular, because there has been huge appetite for looting public money?
It eventually boils down to the leader, because you are responsible, not only to your people, not only to national structures of governance, but you sought the role. You campaigned for it. You won votes. You were declared the winner. Not to entice or to be enticed on corruption, or not to condone corruption. Where you see it, you need to take action. So it boils down to the leader, as I say.
We'll come back to that on the autonomy, and I would like to know whether there are any positive impacts brought about by delegating some responsibilities to the devolved government since the promulgation of the new constitution.
Certainly, yes. Devolution has been a blessing. Probably the best thing that the 2010 constitution has come up with. Devolution was not after fizzled out. So the best effect, positive effect of the 2010 constitution is devolution. It has brought tremendous effect, positive effect in the country. It has brought sense of inclusion rather than exclusion in the country. It has brought stability in terms of governance in the country. It has also changed many lives and livelihoods in the country. Despite all the corruption you may hear or see, it's still a positive impact. It has a huge, tremendous, monumental impact, positive impact on the communities, of our communities, not necessarily as Somalis, but in general across the country. Because everything initially was at the center. Now, with the devolution and resources trickling down, this is going all the way to villages and locations. So it's always a positive, and not from the 2010 constitution, but of course with teething challenges that need to be harnessed and addressed. Yeah.
We can recall that in 1965, the capital concentration was to be centered around the former White Headlands, as articulated in session paper number 10 of the African Socialism and its Application to Planning. I would like to know if the paper was never adopted, how would have Isiolo, Marsabit, Moyale, Mandera, Wajir, and Garissa, how would they have looked like today? Looking at how the devolved government, transformed almost instantly most part of the republic. What if this could have been happening from 1965?
Certainly, it will have made a huge difference, very huge difference. That paper was a malfunction of governance, malfunction of policy. It was really a misplaced document. And I'm sure it will have made, if devolution was from 1963 was implemented to the core up and until now, I'm sure, I believe Northern Kenya will have developed much faster than even other parts of the country. For one reason, largely because the people of the North are people with business acumen, entrepreneurial skills, there are lots of travels and movements to make, and that comes brings about development. So that part of the area will have probably developed much faster than the rest of the country. So it was a mistake, a policy mistake that has really shackled us, that has really deprived us of a lot of growth and development up until liberation came. So we are little inclusive, or included in the country for the last 8 years. 8 years or so, from 2013 or so. Before that, the whole of Wajir district used to get, I think, I'm not sure, but average, probably 50 million a year, or thereabouts. Even if it was 100 million, that is a peanut today. It's a drop in the ocean of what the resources the county is getting now. So it was a policy mistake, a grave policy mistake. But again, a repeat of that, or some kind of a variant of that, is, I think, been reintroduced in the form of the ongoing BBI bill. Yes. That, if not addressed well now, may also have a long-term effect, just as the paper did for the last 40 or so years.
Yes. In 1965, there was that paper that was passed. And just recently, members of parliament from the central Kenya, where the session paper number 10 of 1965, was to their advantage, they are coming today and saying that the money that is being allocated to NFD and other parts of the country, should not be as it should, and that there should be a bill that should be passed, and I would like to know, what should we do if in the future, if a bill with those dire consequences, like the session paper number 1965, is adopted? Recently, we remember that our friends from Central Region were furious about resources being allocated to other people and other communities within the Republic. If in whatever form a nation or two nations among our country's 44 nations and nationalities pass a legislation or an executive degree, whatever form it comes, to continue marginalizing the people of Northern Kenya, what should we do? If our rights are taken, for example, the thoughts of one man, 1 shilling, is passed. What should we do you think, this time around?
This is why I'm saying we can't live in an island. We are a community out of the many communities in the country. Last time at the revenue debate in the Senate, we tried to, along with others in the county, in the Senate, manage to ensure that things don't go way off our expectations. But again came a BBI bill, which introduced a cap on the a cap on the revenues that the county may get based exceptionally on population parameter per quota. If that is passed, then it becomes also another kind of challenge, another kind of papers. This is session of paper 65. Yes. A variation of that. Because the BBI bill, in terms of revenue sharing, caps to 3 times per capita between the lowest and the highest. That will mean that, for example, this Lamu, which has the highest per capita of 17,000, the lowest is Nairobi of about 4,000. So Lamu can't get 3 times what Nairobi is getting. That means 3 times 4 is 12. Okay? It can't get beyond that, or something to that effect. So that is some kind of a structural bottleneck, again, being introduced from the back door through numerical strength of the powers that be as at the moment. So this is why it's necessary for us, our footprint, political footprint, to be felt. That's why we need to close our ranks, okay, and have certain unifying ideals and goals beyond our other jostling goals, other divergent goals. We need to have a rallying call and ensure that where there is this kind of a structural bottleneck being reintroduced again, then we need to be assertive and make sure that we are felt, our presence is felt. We close our ranks and partner with others of like opinion, political opinion, and shape the politics of the day. That is the only way. Otherwise, this is not a game of whinging and whining and sitting somewhere and saying, oh, we are marginalized. No. We need to change our fortunes. We need to take action. Close our ranks and see and have rallying calls. You know, unifying factors. And in this case, it's interest that should drive us, because politics is about interest, national interest. It's our interest that should guide us. If Central Kenyans feel that they need to get, for example, in the BBI, there are 70 seats being introduced. This time, they are not letting IEBC to demarcate those seats. They want it to be passed as a constitutional amendment bill. Okay? But what are we getting out of it? For example, in Wajir, we have a constituency, Wajir South. Since independence, it's just one. Okay? Since 1963, it's just one.
It's one of the biggest.
One of the biggest. It's a landmass of the size of Rwanda. So these things are political games, political mind games, political processes, push and pull. It's not people going to conferences and speaking about it, but making sure you are on the table in decision making. It can't happen when you are going alone. You must go with others. Okay? But even ourselves, we are quite a number. We have about almost 28, 30 parliamentarians now, Somali parliamentarians across the country, from different political affiliations. But when it comes to the need of the community, we are one community. Out of the 44, so we are one community. We need to come together and say, okay, this is our bare minimum, irreducible minimums, and rallying calls and unifying factors. If you are contesting in Mandera East, and you have your own challenges there, then that's particular and peculiar to you. But at national level, we must have one voice.
As a true son of a beloved republic, I'd like to know, Honorable Ahmed, what makes you proud of Kenya?
Kenya is, I think, relatively speaking, in the African continent, it has a semblance of democracy. It has the semblance of unity, relatively speaking. And in the region, it's probably one of the most stable countries in the region, the Horn of Africa. With all the political noise that you may hear in the country, it's one of the most stable countries in the continent. It's one of the most, a bit liberal, democratically speaking. Where free speech is certainly, to a large extent, more open. We have a more open society than most countries in the continent. Of course, it is a country with a lot of teething challenges here and there. The new constitution of 2010 hasn't been perfectly implemented yet. But relatively speaking, it's a hotbed of peace and security, relatively speaking, across the region and the continent. It's a country where democracy is quite pervasive, and it has permeated across many structures and institutions in the country. We, of course, have our peculiar challenges. No country is really perfect. No country. Let no one tell you that it's a perfect country to live in. Any democracy has its own challenges, whether you speak of the US or India or anywhere. They have their own peculiar challenges. So Kenya is really has an age over most other countries in the continent. We hope that things will improve. Of course, it's not a perfect country. There are many challenges here and there in terms of governance, leadership and democracy. Institutions are not perfect. We are not an institutionalized country yet. We are more of a mixed hybrid kind of a country. But the tunnel, there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. The future is illuminating and we hope for the best.
Inshallah. Lastly, Honorable Ahmed, I would like to know your take on the refugee status. The Kenyan government recently said it's going to close down the two largest refugee camps in the country. And I also want you to comment on a number of our youth who never had the opportunity to get an identity card because their fingerprints were taken into the database of the UNHCR. What do you think can be done? I'm sure that President Uhuru Kenyatta started a process of ensuring that there's a verification between the Kenyan Somalis, so that those who are not refugees and became refugees, of circumstances, then they are given new identities and become legally Kenyan citizens. I would like you to comment on those 2 points.
Of course, Kenya is a nation among nations in the world, so it is bound by international law. It doesn't just you don't just wake up one morning and ask refugees to pack and march. But of course, as a nation, as a country, as a sovereign state, sometimes you have to ruffle feathers to ensure that other partners or international partners hear what Kenya wants done. Kenya has hosted refugees for, I think, as far as from 1991, probably going to 30 years now. She may have her own reasons for saying refugees must be repatriated. And I think there was a tripartite agreement to move refugees back to Somalia and other countries, Ethiopia, Sudan, which are still smarting from, of course, civil war. But a lot has changed in Somalia, Sudan, and of course Ethiopia. But I think Kenya knows that it can't just wake up one morning and ask refugees to go back. I'm sure there must be some policy decision to probably, I think in my view, it has to do with what is happening in Somalia and Mogadishu now. There was an expected election, which I think didn't materialize or may have taken another turn. And there is, I believe, general fear in the country, or policymakers, that maybe there could be a new influx of refugees again. So it is, in my view, a kind of a warning shot to international partners to tell them that, hey guys, make sure things are well on the other side of the aisle, to ensure that you don't get another influx of refugees. Kenya also knows that there are many Kenyans who are in the refugee database. These refugees, these Kenyans went in there precisely because of their wanting livelihood. So, of course, there was a policy decision to remove them from refugee database. That, of course, will take some time. But I think it's a process just started that's been ongoing for the last few years. The last was done in 2020. So, generally speaking, I think the call by Kenyans to ask refugees to go back has to do with general fear of what is happening in Mogadishu. General fear that maybe there could be a new wave of refugees again. But of course, Kenya is one of the most law-abiding. I mean, in terms of international laws, generally speaking, it knows its obligations of international law, and to that extent, it does quite well relative to other countries in the continent. So I think, in brief, it has to do with fear of a new wave of influx of refugees.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. Lastly, I'd like to ask you 2 questions. Number one, which is the best structure of governance for a multicultural society like Kenya? And also, where do you see yourself in the political dispensation of our country in the next 5 years? If you could briefly tell us.
To start with, the last one you asked about my seeing myself where.
You started a political movement. You went to the highest court of the land. There's a lot of potential politically in you.
I will be a factor in Wajir politics for the foreseeable future, inshallah. So I'll stop it there. A factor to reckon with for the foreseeable future, inshallah. The best governance structure for Kenya, if I will go straight to the second question, is I think it will do better if you take the parliamentary system. It gives more voice. It really deviates us from ethnic numerical strengths to more of political strengths of parties. And that's where smaller voices, smaller communities with weak numerical strengths can have a presence and footprint on the table than the current numerical strength of ethnic calculations, presidential. It becomes a conglomeration of big groups, big tribes, and then those are the guys who form the next government. Everyone else takes, you see, the second fiddle or whatever, second, third, or fourth fiddle. So I think the best structure for Kenya will have been, considering the multi-ethnic communities that live in the country, considering the dichotomy of societies and communities, will probably have been a parliamentary system with strengthened institutions, independent judiciary. Okay, independence of judiciary is very key. Law is a precursor to peace and order. So institutionalized governance through parliament will have been a better structure than the current presidential system that we have. Not the one anticipated in BBI, where the prime minister is appointed and all this kind of, no, that's not what I'm thinking about. Exclusive parliamentary system. We can have the president as ceremonial, but us as a community, Somali, or probably many other communities, that will have served us better than the current presidential system.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, for speaking to us. It's been an honor to speak to you on this program on the faces of Kenyan Somalis. We encourage you to keep agitating for Somali rights, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you very much. To all our audience, you can get this podcast and TV program on all social media platforms. See you soon with another face of a Kenyan Somali.
Sure.
Garsorna inogayel gashano Allah namideyo amni iyo gonimo iyo isku filan Allah naguraji
Anutos na wala layalo Aniska shifril kenagumne
Inago ishilkan hagar la angku haulan dalkenan Kenya o anu jecelhay ilaalintiisa aan abid ku dadaalno
Andisnon u adeegna dalkeeno wajib weeyana saaran ilaaye
Ihtiramkay Kenya mudan tahay aan siino umidowna hil ogo iskaashina samayno abidkeen aan ahano dad abaal